Welcome to Oneness and Wellness. This week's guest is Robin Casarjian. She not only is a dear friend, but she is a person who has been making an amazing difference in the lives of many prisoners across the country and across the world. So nice to have you with us, Robin.
Thank you, Dot. Just great to be here.
And I'm going to begin with a good news story that comes from Houses of Healing. This is a book that Robin has written, and this is the new edition. And it's towards the very end of the book. And I think it's a message for all of us. It's called A Higher Purpose. Remember the story of the king who sends a person out to do a task. We're all on that mission. And we all seem to forget about the task we've been sent to accomplish while being distracted by other tasks. For example, you may have spent years developing a personality that easily attracts and impresses others. Or you could use your time to sculpt a perfect body in the gym. Perhaps you've worked hard to earn a college degree and now can speak for hours on a certain subject. While all these accomplishments have value, if we aren't becoming more loving and offering love to others, the one task we're really sent in the world to do waits undone. When you get down to the bottom line, there is a higher purpose in life for you, for me, for all of us. This purpose is to bring the light of your spiritual self into this beautiful, awesome, painful, and anguished world. The man who rules a corporate empire, affecting or saving the lives of thousands by bringing them, say, needed medicine, but does it with greed in his heart, may not meet his higher purpose. The prisoner who meets his or her fellow inmates with love and kindness does. You've come here to be present and to listen and respond to the voice and the call of your own heart. Then, regardless of the situation you find yourself in, you are a positive force, a healing presence. Thank you, Robin, for those words. Thank you for that message. It's the message of the heart. It's the message of love, and you are all about love. So let's go back in time, because I've known you for a long time, and let's go back. I think the first book that you wrote was about forgiveness.
That's right.
Do you want to say a little bit about that book?
Well, it was a book that Bantam published in 1992 called Forgiveness, A Bold Choice for a Peaceful Heart. And I came to write that book because as a therapist and as a stress management consultant and trainer, I just saw that so many people had unresolved anger and resentment and guilt, and I thought, how can I help them to really resolve these feelings of anger, resentment, and guilt? And I read a lot and thought a lot and talked to colleagues, but I knew that the ultimate healing of these emotions really came through forgiveness. And when I looked out there in the world to see what had been written about forgiveness, almost nothing was out there back in the end of the 1980s, middle of the 1980s. Some things in a religious perspective, but nothing from a psychological perspective. And it seemed like the work, even from a religious perspective, wasn't articulated in a way, as I often say, bringing forgiveness out of the realm of a lofty ideal, something that we kind of should do or could do, down to a grounded strategy that people could actually figure out, okay, how do I forgive? And so I started thinking about the topic and articulating it in a way that seemed to make good sense to people, and I could see light bulbs going off, so I started to write about it and found that it was helpful to people.
It's what we all need. It's forgiveness, and I think there's still people have a misunderstanding about forgiveness, that you're doing it for someone else. It's not something that benefits yourself, but we know that if you are willing to forgive, open your heart, and take those steps into forgiveness, everything changes.
Absolutely, because you become free. I often think of when we hold on to anger and resentment, it's like we have a handcuff around our wrist, and we're handcuffed to the person toward whom we feel that resentment. We're bound to them in a way. We're dragging them along with us through our days and through our nights. And through forgiveness, we can, in a way, we're our own jailer. We can free ourselves from being bound to people through negativity and hurt and pain, and move on with our lives feeling much freer.
Right. And I know that you have helped so many people, not only on the outside of prison, but definitely in the inside. And this book, Houses of Healing, has been, tell me, when did you begin to write the book?
Well, in 1988, a person came up to me after giving a public talk on forgiveness and said, what you're saying would be so relevant for the prisoners that I work with in an addiction recovery class to hear. Would you come in and give a talk? And that really started the whole process of my working in a prison. And I volunteered for about 4 years. And at the end of the 4 years, I thought, well, this is great. I really love this, but I'm not reaching that many people. Maybe I should write another book to try to bring the spirit and the content of this work, not just on forgiveness, but on what I call emotional literacy. And, you know, your viewers, many times, people might not have heard the term emotional literacy, but intuitively, you probably know what it means. When you think of reading literacy, it's about reading the written word. Emotional literacy is about being able to read our own feelings, to understand them, to manage them effectively, and that's what I was trying to teach in the prison setting, in the healthcare setting, wherever.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere.
That's
because
right.
there is nothing, if we don't
That's right.
have emotional balance, emotional literacy, then we're out here and we're lost, as far as I can see. If we started with the little ones and we give them some tools in order to balance their emotions and become literate, there'll be a world of change.
Absolutely.
And a world that's much more peaceful.
Absolutely, exactly. People will become much more peaceful, more in control of themselves. You know, it's natural for us to feel anger and frustration and, you know, and a huge range of feelings. But for some people, they so identify with these feelings that it takes over their lives rather than them being able to manage it in a good way, experience some peace and balance, and be able to go into their families, into their work life, into the world as a balanced person who can open their hearts and isn't ruled by those more negative and fear-based emotions.
Exactly. Well, I know that this book is in English. I know that it's also in Spanish. I know that you created the foundation, the Lionheart Foundation, and I know that it's in videos, that you have a manual that goes with this. And as I said, the books are all over the world.
Well, when I first decided to write this book, I thought, well, I don't really want to write it unless there's a way to put it in prison libraries for free, because...
And I'll stop right there, because that's the big thing that has always touched my heart, that you did it for free, that you made sure that this book was available free of charge in all of these libraries, and to anyone who asked for it, you were willing to give it. Sorry to interrupt, but that has always amazed me.
Well, I knew that if I didn't do that, it wouldn't get to the people that it was being written for, because there really hasn't been the will in the prison setting, in the jail setting, unfortunately, to get resources to the prisoners that will help them really take responsibility for their lives and their behaviors and their actions. And I felt that Houses of Healing would be a resource that would help them in that direction. There was a jail, actually he was the president of the American Jail Association, and he said that, no, actually it was a sheriff that I'm thinking of, and he said incarceration is too precious an intervention opportunity to waste. Here we have people locked up, and yet we don't give them, while they're locked up, the tools to manage their emotions, to deal with their addictions, to take responsibility for the harm that they've caused in the world, and to develop greater empathy so that they won't get out and keep repeating the cycle that got them into jail or prison in the first place.
I think in the book I was reading last night that there's a poem that one of the people who was in one of the workshops in the prison wrote, talk about the gift of prison, and that was a gift to him to be able to turn his life around.
Right, right. Because he was given tools and he was given respect by the volunteers who went in, and sometimes there's very loving staff in prisons, but too often the prison setting can be also very destructive for people because of the humiliation that's just part of the contact. So it really depends on the prisoner and the kind of experiences they get exposed to and what they're ready to take advantage of. But there's so much more that can be done that is not being done in the prison setting.
Right. I was reading, I think the figures from 2011, maybe it was, that one out of 147, there's a person in prison. 1 out of 147 people, they're in prison. So we've become, I know that we incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. Yes. And that has to, impact us in many, many ways. Not only socially, but economically, our mental health, everything, the families, the cycle when you talk about the inner child and the cycle of violence. So if a child is treated violently as a child and then they grow up, then they become the parent who has no tools to teach the children any differently. So, and you give examples of that in your book also. What inspires you, Robin?
I have always just felt like there's a strong wind at my back, encouraging me in different directions. But part of that, I think, is that I have a deep personal commitment to doing things every day that help me center myself, like meditation, like prayer. So I think that the wind might be at everybody's back, but it kind of just tosses one around unless we center enough so that it's as if the wind can actually push you in a particular direction rather than just throw you to and fro. But and it's so much of what I teach, whether I was teaching in the healthcare setting, in the corporations or the prisons, it's really all the same message, that we live in a world where, there's so many things vying for our attention, there's so many stressors. It is so critical to take time to center oneself on a daily basis, and so that we can go forward into life from a place of we tap into our own fundamental goodness and strength by virtue of centering ourselves. And if we don't, it could be prayer, it could be, for some people, it's running, for some people, it's this. I always say there's 1,000 paths up the same mountain, or maybe 1,000,000 paths up the same mountain, but you have to be walking one of those paths that really helps you to tune into yourself on a daily basis.
And that wind that's coming behind you is, boy, there's a lot of spiritual entities there, energetic entities that push you forward, because you're a person that, and I've known you for many, many years, I've sat on your board for a while, the love that you have, the compassion that you have, the kindness that you have, for a little person, your spirit is huge. The aura, the ripples that go out from you are just quite amazing.
Well, thank you.
You've always been an inspiration to me. You've been someone that inspires me in so many different ways. So I thank you, Robin, for all that you do. And tell our viewing audience how they can get in touch with Lionheart and anything else that you might like to to express to them?
Well, I'd love people to just learn more about the Lionheart Foundation, and there's a video on the homepage of the Lionheart Foundation website. So it's very simple. If you have access to the internet, you just need to go to www.lionheart.org. So very simple, lionheart.org, and you can learn all about the work of not only the prisoners, our prison project called the National Emotional Literacy Project for Prisoners, but as you'll probably learn about in the next program, also our work with youth, which is really incredible, and that's called the National Emotional Literacy Project for Youth at Risk.
Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll stay with us. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Marsha and the Wellness Roundtable.